You think you know who you are, a name, a job, a face in the mirror, a history you can recall, a personality you've carefully built. But beneath all that is something you don't control, a presence, a force, a version of you that doesn't speak, but watches. You feel it sometimes, when you're angry and you don't know why. When you hurt someone and regret it later. When you sabotage your own success. Or when you stare into the mirror and think, I don't even know who I am anymore. Carl Jung called it the shadow. The shadow is not evil. It is not a demon. It is not your enemy. It is you. Just the parts of you that were rejected, buried, unseen. You were not born with a shadow. It was created, built over years, shaped by every time someone told you, don't do that. Be quiet. That's not who you are. So you hid it. You locked it away and thought that was the end. But it never left. We all have a shadow. It grows as we grow. It learns everything we suppress. Our jealousy, our rage, our fears, our guilt, even our potential. Yes, even the parts of you that are brilliant, wild, and free. If they didn't fit the image others had for you, were cast into the dark. The shadow is not just made of bad things. It is made of real things. Things you weren't allowed to be. Most people live their whole lives without ever meeting their shadow. They deny it, avoid it, blame others for its behavior. But the shadow doesn't go away. It waits, it watches, and when you're weak, when you're tired of pretending, when your mask cracks, it steps in. You say things you didn't mean. You hurt people you love. You fall into patterns you swore you'd never repeat. And then you wonder, why did I do that? The truth is, you are not one person. You are two, the one you show and the one you suppress. And the more you suppress, the more control the shadow gains, not because it's evil, but because it wants to be seen, heard, acknowledged. The shadow isn't trying to destroy you. It's trying to complete you, but it will tear your life apart if you keep pretending it doesn't exist. Jung believed that real freedom, real wholeness, only begins when you turn inward and face the thing you feared the most, yourself. Not the version they applauded, not the one that smiles and nods, but the raw, unpredictable force you've been hiding from your whole life. And once you see it, you'll never unsee it, because the shadow was never outside you. It's always been home, waiting. So ask yourself, what part of me have I locked away? What truth about myself have I refused to face? What am I pretending not to be? Because until you know, you are not free. You are a puppet, and your shadow pulls the strings. You weren't born with a shadow. It was given to you, not by nature, but by the world. As a child, you were whole. You laughed when you wanted. You cried without shame. You screamed, danced, asked endless questions. You felt everything, deeply. You were alive. But that kind of freedom was too much for the world to handle. So they began to shape you. They told you what to do, what not to do, who you could be, and who you couldn't. They didn't mean harm. Most of them were doing what was done to them. But every time they said, don't be like that. Stop crying. Boys don't feel that way. Girls must behave. A small part of you was pushed into the dark. You learned quickly. Love was conditional. Approval came with a price. Be good, get affection. Be bad, get silence, punishment, or worse, shame. So you began to cut pieces off yourself. Anger, dangerous. Curiosity, inappropriate. Sadness, weak. All the things that made you whole were now problems to fix. You learned how to perform, to be polite, to be agreeable, to fit in. You smiled when you didn't feel like it, laughed when you were confused, obeyed when you wanted to rebel. You became acceptable, safe, invisible, and they called it maturity. They said, you're such a good kid, but they didn't see what it cost you. The shadow was born in the places you weren't allowed to go. It holds every moment you were told that's not who you are. It remembers the rage you swallowed, the tears you held back, the questions no one let you ask, the dreams they told you were too big, all still there, not dead, just hidden, just waiting. You see, the shadow doesn't grow by choice. It grows by rejection, by silence, by pretending. The more you had to hide, the more power it gained. It watched you learn how to lie, how to deny what you felt, how to trade authenticity for survival. You didn't become fake, you became fragmented. And one day, you forgot there was ever another version of you. The one who screamed freely, the one who danced without music, the one who said no without fear. But the shadow didn't forget. It still lives inside you. It still remembers, and it still wants to come home. But it can't until you go back to the moment you decided it was safer to be accepted than to be whole. That's where your shadow was born, and that's where it waits for your return. You think you dislike them because of who they are. Too loud, too arrogant, too emotional, too controlling, too full of themselves. But Carl Jung says you're not reacting to them. You're reacting to yourself, the part of you you've rejected, now living outside of you, in someone else's body. This is what Jung called projection. The shadow cannot speak directly. It cannot walk out into the world. So it finds another way. It turns your world into a mirror. Everything you don't want to see inside, you begin to see outside. You say, that guy is such a narcissist. She's so manipulative. I can't stand people like that. But what if that's you? Not the whole of you, but a piece, a forgotten piece, a buried fragment that finally found a way to be seen. Projection is a defense mechanism. It protects the ego. It says, that ugliness isn't mine, it's theirs. But that's the trick. The more something triggers you, the more likely it belongs to you. The shadow isn't subtle. It grabs your attention. It shouts through irritation, through judgment, through jealousy, through disgust, until finally you either look inward or continue to be haunted by yourself in every room. Ever wonder why some people don't trigger you, even when they do the same things? Why one person's arrogance enrages you, but another's confidence doesn't? Because projection is personal. It hits the part of you that hasn't been resolved. That's why your triggers are sacred. They're not signs of weakness. They're invitations. Each one says, look here, this is where you're hiding. The shadow loves projection because it keeps it alive. Without you ever knowing it exists, you think you're at war with the world, with your co-workers, your partner, your political enemies. But the war has always been internal. They are just the battlefield. And yet, there's a strange beauty to it, because projection is a map. It points you to the places you've buried. If you dare to ask, why does this bother me? Where have I done the same? What am I afraid they'll see in me? You start to uncover something ancient, uncomfortable, honest. Your shadow, still whispering through strangers, still begging you to come home. You don't hate others because they're terrible. You hate others because they remind you of who you're not allowed to be. The woman who speaks too loudly? You silenced yourself long ago. The man who takes up too much space? You were taught to shrink. The people who live without shame? You were raised in it. The shadow doesn't just hold your sins. It holds your lost fire, your wildness, your power. And until you reclaim it, you'll keep finding it in everyone else. So the next time you feel the urge to judge, pause, listen, ask, what part of me am I seeing in them? Because the truth is, you don't hate them. You hate what they awoke in you. And that truth can either set you free or continue to control you. Most people believe they are in control of their words, their choices, their lives. But the truth? You are often not the one driving. Something else, deeper, older, is at the wheel. You've felt it. That moment when you say something and think, why did I just say that? When you push someone away, even though you wanted them close. When you destroy something good before it can even hurt you. That's not bad luck. That's not you messing up. That's the shadow taking the wheel. The shadow doesn't ask permission. It slips through the cracks, through exhaustion, through alcohol, through stress, through fear. It appears when your conscious mind is weak, distracted, or overwhelmed. And in those moments, your well-behaved self goes quiet, and something else emerges. Not evil, not cruel, just raw, untamed, unfiltered, unmasked. You lash out, you lie, you betray someone, you hurt yourself, and you don't even know why. Later you say, "That wasn't me," but it was. Just not the version you like to show. It was the part you buried, the part that's been waiting for a moment to breathe. And when it does, it doesn't whisper, it roars. Think of every moment in your life when you lost control. Not once, but over and over again. That self-sabotage, that sudden rage, that panic, that guilt that hits out of nowhere, all of it is communication. Your shadow, speaking in the only language it knows, disruption. Because it cannot speak in words, so it speaks through actions. And the more you ignore it, the louder it gets. Your conscious mind builds a perfect image. You try to be kind, patient, in control. But the shadow is not interested in perfection. It wants truth. It wants release. So when you bottle things up, swallow your anger, fake your feelings, deny your instincts, the shadow waits. And when you least expect it, it explodes. This is why self-sabotage is so common. Because the shadow doesn't want your success. If it comes at the cost of authenticity, you think, why do I ruin things just when they start going well? It's not sabotage. It's a scream, a protest, a part of you refusing to live in exile one more day. The shadow doesn't hate you. It's tired of being ignored, tired of being the villain, tired of watching you fake a life, while the real one dies inside. So it takes the wheel, not to punish you, but to wake you up. Because the real danger is not the shadow. The real danger is pretending it's not there. So the next time you lose control, don't just ask, "What's wrong with me?" Ask, "Who's speaking through me? What part of me have I left unheard for too long?" Because the shadow isn't your enemy, it's your reflection, and it only takes the wheel when you stop listening. Let's talk about addiction, not just drugs, not just alcohol, but the addictions you don't call addictions. Scrolling endlessly, checking messages you don't care about, working nonstop, shopping when you're numb, controlling what you eat, obsessing over people who hurt you. Addiction isn't about pleasure, it's about escape. And the shadow lives in the places you run from. You don't check your phone 100 times a day because you need connection. You do it because you're afraid to sit still with your own thoughts. Because silence means your shadow gets louder, so you stay distracted, scrolling, clicking, numbing. But the more you numb, the more your shadow thrives. Addiction isn't weakness, it's a strategy. A brilliant one, a way to protect yourself from the pain you never dealt with, from the memories you buried, from the parts of you that still scream in the quiet. So you drink, you binge, you repeat old cycles, not because you want to suffer, but because suffering is familiar, and familiar feels safe. Your shadow doesn't just hide in trauma. It hides in coping, in the rituals you built to avoid feeling, in the overthinking, the late-night texting, the fake smiles, the food you eat not for hunger, but for silence. Addiction is not the disease. It's the symptom. The shadow is the disease. Every time you light another cigarette, every time you reopen that message thread, every time you binge a show you don't even like, every time you pretend to be okay, ask yourself, what am I avoiding right now? Because somewhere inside that moment, your shadow is whispering, I'm still here. But instead of turning inward, you turn away and call it self-care. Call it survival. Call it just a bad habit, but it's more than that. It's exile. Addiction is not about the substance. It's about the silence, the aching, the thing you're trying not to hear. You could remove every addiction from your life and still feel lost Because until you face what you're escaping from, you'll just find new distractions. The shadow doesn't care what you run to. It only cares that you're still running. And the great irony? Your shadow knows what you need. You think it wants you to suffer, but it wants the opposite. It wants you to feel, to remember, to face what hurt you, so it can finally let go. But as long as you numb, you remain frozen, a ghost, haunting your own life. So what do? You stop escaping. Even for a moment, you sit still, you listen, you feel, and when the panic rises, you don't run, you breathe, you stay. Because on the other side of that discomfort is your shadow, tired, lonely, ready to come home. So the next time your finger reaches for the bottle, or the screen, or the food, pause. Ask yourself, what am I unwilling to feel right now? Because that's where the shadow lives, not in your addictions, but in your absence, and it will wait for as long as it takes, until you return to the part of yourself. You read the books. You make the vision boards. You listen to the motivational podcasts. You repeat the affirmations. I am enough. I am healing. I am strong. And still, you feel broken. You wake up feeling anxious. You sabotage your own goals. You explode at the people you love. And then you go back and read more. But here's the truth. You can't heal what you won't even look at. Self-help can be medicine, but most of the time, it's morphine. It doesn't cure you. It just numbs the pain of being disconnected from yourself. You consume positivity, like candy, quote mantras you don't believe, force gratitude, while secretly resenting everything. You're not healing. You're performing healing. They tell you, focus on the light. Let go of negativity. Don't dwell on the past. Forgive and move on. But your shadow is the past. It is the negativity. It is the thing you were never allowed to say. So what happens when you try to skip the darkness? It waits. It grows. It tightens its grip. Because the shadow doesn't disappear just because you wrote it out of your journal. You cannot out-positive your shadow. You cannot gratitude your way out of grief. You cannot high-vibrate your way out of the trauma you still haven't named. Most self-help tells you to move forward. But the shadow doesn't care about forward. It cares about truth. And if you're still lying to yourself, no amount of vision boards will set you free. Healing isn't pretty. It's not neat. It's not a 5-step program with pastel infographics and smiling influencers. Real healing looks like rage, looks like grief, looks like reliving the thing you swore you buried and choosing this time not to run. But no one tells you that. Because pain doesn't sell. Hope does. Quick fixes do. Shiny promises do. So the self-help industry thrives on keeping you just broken enough to keep buying. You don't need another morning routine. You don't need another journal prompt. You don't need to manifest harder. You need to turn around to face the thing you've spent your entire healing journey trying to avoid. That moment you were hurt and told to be quiet. That memory you've renamed 100 times. That emotion you were taught was unacceptable. That's where the shadow lives, not in your weakness, but in your silence. This is why your progress feels fake, why your breakthroughs don't last, why you relapse, why you sabotage. Because you're not integrating. You're escaping. With prettier tools, you've simply traded avoidance for aesthetics. You're still running, just faster, and smiling while you do it. But the shadow doesn't believe your smile. Real self-help doesn't feel good. It feels raw. It feels ugly. It feels like losing control. But it's not the shadow tearing you apart. It's you finally pulling yourself back together without pretending. So burn the mask, drop the mantras, and sit in the silence you've been avoiding for years. That's where the real work begins. You think dreams are just random, just your brain processing noise, leftover thoughts, meaningless images. But what if they aren't? What if your dreams are the only place where your shadow can finally speak? Because in waking life, you silence it, deny it, distract from it. But in dreams, you're not in control. And that's when it begins to whisper. Carl Jung believed dreams are the language of the unconscious, not chaos, but code, symbols, metaphors, images that carry meaning you haven't dared to speak aloud. And the shadow? It speaks this language fluently. It shows up as a stranger chasing you, a monster you can't fight, a version of yourself you don't recognize, or a loved one turning against you. It's not trying to scare you, it's trying to reveal you, because what you fear in dreams is often what you've repressed in life. Ever had a dream where you couldn't scream, couldn't move, couldn't look away? That's your shadow, trying to hold your attention, because during the day, you run, but at night, you can't hide. So it appears again and again until you finally ask, what are you trying to show me? Jung taught that recurring dreams are messages, not curses, not glitches, but letters from your unconscious mind. You keep dreaming of the same house, the same hallway, the same fall, the same figure in the dark, because the message hasn't been heard yet. Because your shadow is patient. It will visit you night after night until you listen. Even the strange dreams, being lost, missing the train, your teeth falling out, they all mean something. Powerlessness, fear of failure, losing control. Your shadow speaks in riddles because you've forgotten how to speak in truth. This is why you wake up from some dreams and feel like you just saw something sacred or terrifying. It's not just fantasy. It's recognition. The part of you that you buried so long ago. When it speaks through dreams, you remember what it feels like to be whole, to feel fear and know it's yours, to see darkness and know it came from you, not from outside. The shadow uses dreams, not to haunt you, but to remind you you are more than the story you've rehearsed. You are rage you never expressed, desire you never admitted, wisdom you never trusted, wounds you never healed. And in the dream, you feel it all at once, because there, nothing is filtered. Nothing is hidden, not even you. So the next time you wake from a dream you can't explain, don't brush it off. Sit with it. Ask what it meant, what it wanted you to feel, what part of you was trying to speak, because your shadow is not gone. It's just sleeping right beneath your eyelids. You've spent your whole life running from pain, from anger, from shame, from the parts of yourself you were told never to show. But one day, you stop. You stop pretending, stop numbing, stop lying to yourself. And when the distractions go quiet and the noise fades, you finally hear it, a voice, low, familiar, waiting, and you realize it was always there, right behind you. That's when you turn and see it, your shadow, not a ghost, not a monster, not something evil, just a version of you that's been alone for a very, very long time. You want to look away, you want to reject it again, but you don't. You stare, and the longer you stare, the more you realize it's not angry, it's not violent. It's not here to destroy you, it's here to be seen. Or you see in its eyes the fear you never allowed yourself to feel. You see the rage that was never allowed to speak. You see the jealousy, the lust, the longing, the sadness, the chaos, all of it. Everything you were told made you bad. It was never bad. It was just real. The shadow remembers everything. Every moment you were told to sit down. Be quiet. Don't cry. Don't feel. And it carried that weight so you could survive. It became what you couldn't afford to be. And now you finally thank it for doing what you were too young to understand. Or you don't fight it anymore. You don't label it. You don't fix it. You don't heal it. You just let it speak. And it says, I missed you. You cry, not because it hurts, but because it's real. For the first time in your life, you are no longer divided. You are no longer pretending, no longer wearing masks, no longer hiding from yourself. This is what healing actually looks like. not light, but integration. Or because healing isn't becoming someone new, it's becoming whole. The truth is, you were never broken. You were just incomplete. And the part you were missing was the part you locked away and called wrong. That part is now back, and so are you. So the next time you feel yourself unraveling, don't run. Go to the mirror, look deep, and ask, what part of me have I still refused to love? Because that's where the shadow lives. And once you see it, truly see it, it will never need to hide again. Integration is not an event. It's a slow return, a quiet remembering. Not a victory, not a breakthrough, but a reunion. The moment you stop trying to be better and start trying to be real, you don't kill the shadow. You don't fix it. You befriend it. You say, come with me. And for the first time, you walk side by side. You don't have to be perfect. Perfection was never the goal. Wholeness was. To be angry and loving, afraid and brave, flawed and beautiful at the same time. That's what it means to be human. To hold light in one hand and darkness in the other without needing to choose. You used to think healing meant getting rid of your pain. But now you see, healing means making peace with it. Letting it live beside you without letting it define you. You stop being ashamed. Stop hiding your cracks. Stop editing your truth. And in that space, you breathe again. Fully. Finally. Integration means your shadow doesn't control you, but it walks with you. It warns you when you lie. It trembles when you betray yourself. It shouts when something is off. You don't push it away anymore. You listen. You sit with it. When you're tired, when you're triggered, when you feel like destroying everything. And it doesn't ruin your life. It protects it. Because now, it doesn't have to scream. It knows you'll hear it whisper. You no longer react without understanding. You respond with awareness. You know when it's fear. You know when it's ego. You know when it's projection. Because you've seen the origin. You've named it. And by naming it, you've tamed it. The shadow is no longer the enemy. It's the compass, the signal, the part of you that tells the truth, no matter how much it hurts. Integration doesn't make life easier, but it makes life yours. You stop pretending. You stop chasing. You stop hiding behind light. You let the dark in, not to drown in it, but to hold it. And in doing so, you become something sacred, not pure, not perfect, but whole. So the next time you feel lost, don't ask what's wrong with you. Ask, what part of me have I abandoned? What truth have I not yet lived? And let your shadow answer. Not with violence, not with fear, but with memory, with truth, with the simple, quiet reminder, you never had to fight me. You just had to find me. You spent so long fighting the shadow, calling it evil, calling it broken, calling it dangerous. You ran from it, buried it, blamed it. You told yourself, if I just ignore it long enough, it will go away. But it never left, because it never hated you. It just wanted you to come home. The shadow isn't a punishment. It's not your curse. It's your key. It holds the power you gave away, the voice you silenced, the truth you couldn't say. And when you finally listen, it sets you free, not from the world, but from yourself, from the version of you that was always acting, performing, pleasing, surviving. You don't need that anymore. You are not just the light, you are also the dark. You are the tension between both. That's where real freedom lives, not in perfection, but in wholeness. To feel anger without losing yourself, to cry without shame, to speak without fear. That is freedom. And that is what the shadow has been holding this entire time. You thought the shadow would hurt you, but it was never here to harm. It was here to show you what was real, to show you who you are beneath the masks, to remind you that your power was never in being flawless. It was in being fully human, raw, messy, unapologetic, alive. So now you stop running. You stop apologizing. For the parts of you that don't fit, you stop shrinking just to be accepted, and you begin again, not as half a person, not as a mask, but as you, the whole you, the dark and the light, the fire and the water, the wound and the wisdom, and you walk forward, not fearless, but free. So the next time you feel the shadow rising, don't silence it, don't punish it. Sit down, listen, ask, what truth are you trying to show me? Because behind the fear, behind the anger, behind the pain, is something sacred. You, the real you, and it's been waiting your whole life to be seen. If this spoke to you, if something inside you stirred, then you've already begun. Let this be the first step, not toward becoming someone new, but toward remembering who you were before the world told you to hide. If you're ready to go deeper, subscribe, not for me, but for you, because the journey into yourself has only just begun.